Kira Young.
Thank you, Swami. Welcome, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. We have a really special guest today that many of you know and enjoy, Susanne Posel. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we were talking before the show started about Occupy corporatism and your U.S. Independent online newspaper, and you had indicated that there was a really important issue that had come up. You were talking about it on the radio last night with this Council for National Policy. So this show is probably going to be a lot about that, and you're going to teach us because we don't know anything about it. And it ties into everything we wanted to talk to you about today. So.
Exactly, and it's unfortunate that we don't know about this. This is a real secret group, not like the Bilderberg Group, not like the Council on Foreign Relations. These are a real secret group. They do not want anyone talking about them. There's very little information from them specifically, except for on their website, which is cfnp.org. You can go there, and we're going to talk about what's on their website. We're going to talk about their agenda. But first, I'd like to talk about how they started. They are a 33-year-old group, started in 1981, the same year that Reagan took office. In fact, Reagan took office in January, and they came into being in mid-April of the same year. Reverend Tim LaHaye is the co-author of the Left Behind series and the founding head figure of the Council for National Policy. Mark Weyrich, a Christian conservative and political organizer and co-founder of the Heritage Foundation, and that's very big. And you want to keep that in mind because you're going to hear a lot about the Heritage Foundation. They have lots of members of their organization in the Council for National Policy. Nelson Baker Hunt, who is the son of H.L. Hunt, the oil billionaire. These are people who ponied up money to set up the initial founding partners of the Council for National Policy. And Reverend Sun Myung Moon from the Moonies. Big. In fact, he is the biggest contributor. He set up the Washington Times. Don't believe a word that comes out of it. Please don't share their articles.
Right.
It's all BS. Reverend Mooney was actually crowned in Capitol Hill as the savior of the world by members of the CNP, congressmen, and senators in the late 90s. And this was caught on film and reported on even by the mainstream. Tom Brokaw was talking about it. It was very interesting because the lawmakers that attended said that they didn't know that they were going to a coronation ceremony where they literally put a crown on Reverend Mooney and his wife's head and named them saviors of the world.
Big cult activity going on.
Big. But see now, Tim LaHaye is a huge name in Christian circles. So this is extremely important, okay? Now, the founding members of the CNP stated that they were seeking to create a Christian conservative alternative to what they believed was the liberalism of the Council on Foreign Relations. Okay? So think of it this way. You've got, and this is simplistic, and I'm giving you this example just for argument's sake. I know that it's more complicated. We don't have to go into that. I'm not misinforming you. I just want you to think of this in simple terms so that you can understand the connection. You've got the trunk of the tree, which is the guys who are running the show. And then you've got on the left side, for the blue team, you've got the CFR. And from that main branch, all other sub-branches and sub-branches of sub-branches fall out, and you've got lots of propaganda and lots of people who get their agenda going from government to corporations to individuals to philanthropists, Hillary Clinton, Obama. Obama's a little bit interesting, though, and I'll get into that later on.
Okay.
But then you've got on the right side the Council for National Policy, the red team.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that falls underneath them and all of their branches and sub-branches and sub-branches of sub-branches.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone from the Republican Party all the way down to the right-wing conspiracy theorists or the tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorists. Every facet of the red team, just like every facet of the blue team.
Right.
Now, it's important because they created themselves to be a Christian conservative alternative to the Council on Foreign Relations. So it's just another flavor, folks. It literally is. We talk about the right-left paradigm. These are the two institutions that actually control it, and everybody underneath it.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying that they don't have puppet masters themselves, but they are puppet masters.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Their mission statement includes agendas such as to acquaint our membership, I'm quoting, to acquaint our membership with those in position of leadership in our nation in order, did you get that? To acquaint our membership with those in positions of leadership in our nation in order that mutual respect is fostered, to encourage the exchange of information concerning the methodology of working within the system. Did you hear that? To promote the values and ends sought by individual members. Hello?
Wow.
Their agenda, they want to meet with, hook up with, have lunch with, go to their kids' birthday parties with men, women, lawmakers, heads of corporations, philanthropists, in positions of leadership in our nation.
It's a schmooze fest of those who are movers and shakers.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yes.
To foster a mutual respect for the values and ends sought by their members. Now, who are their members? I'm going to go down a list, and it's quite lengthy. And please interject at any time to talk about any of these members. Okay?
Okay.
So, Richard Allen, National Security Advisor. This is a list, so you guys understand this is a list of their members. It's not all-encompassing because I'm still finding them, okay? But I've been researching this for almost a month now, and I'm so shocked at what I found that I can't wait until I found everything. I have to start talking about this now. 4 weeks is enough because this ties into what happened at the Bundy Ranch. This ties into the Las Vegas shooting. This ties into all the fake revolutions we've seen all over the world, including what's happening here in this country. It explains the creation of militias here in this country. It explains nearly everything. We can even get into what's going on in Iraq and with the BRICS nations and OPEC and petrol. So let's start with this list. Richard Allen, National Security Advisor under Reagan. John Ashcroft, former U.S. Attorney General. Steve Baldwin, who is now the CEO and President of the Council for National Policy. And by the way, he was quoted in 2004 as saying, "My organization controls everything in the world." Okay. Gary Bauer from Family Research Center. Amand Borchgrave, a journalist for the Washington Times, who is owned by Reverend Mooney and the Insight magazine. Richard DeVos, who is a co-founder of Amway. James Dobson, who is from Focus on the Family. Jerry Falwell, televangelist. Edward Fuellner, Edwin Fuellner, I'm sorry, founder of the Heritage Foundation. You're going to see a lot more members from them in the CNP. Kevin Gentry, who is a lobbyist for Koch Brothers, or Koch Industries. Larry Klayman, founder of Judicial Watch. Wayne LaPierre, spokesman for the NRA. Yes. I always mess up this person's name, so I apologize. Pat Marscrisana, who is the producer of the Clinton Chronicles. Folks, this is where we get the Clinton body count from. Wow. Pat Robertson, televangelist. John... Wow. John Sununu, former chief of staff under George H.W. Bush, Dr. Stanley Monteith, Eric Erickson, editor-in-chief for Red State.
A little bummed to hear Stanley Monteith on that list.
I was too. There are a couple of other people I'm going to mention that I got bummed out as well. And that's why I'm saying, folks, we've been lied to, okay, by the people who told us that they were telling us the truth. And I know that that's kind of become a cliche. Oh, the alternative media has been infiltrated. No, folks, seriously. What you have been taught to believe about the reality of our world from the truth tellers is false. Now, either they know that they're doing this or they're just useful idiots. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean that because they're ignorant. They don't know about the Council for National Policy. They didn't do any homework before they got affiliated with certain groups and certain people. And that's just, I guess, the human condition. We get emotionally riled up and we react. And we have to stop doing that. Seriously. So let me go on. Louis Berner, who is the managing director of Bain Capital. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal.
Wow.
John Allison, president and CEO for the Cato Institute. Fred Barnes, who is the executive editor of the Weekly Standard. Steve Green, president for Hobby Lobby Stores. You want to remember that, Steve Green, Hobby Lobby Stores. I'm going to talk about that later.
Okay.
Jim DeMint, president-elect of the Heritage Foundation. There we go, 3 of them. Michael Medved, who is the syndicated talk show host and best-selling New York Times author. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Pat Buchanan.
What?
Eric Prince, who is the founder of Blackwater, and by the way, his mother helped put up some of the money to set up the CNP.
Oh, man.
Mr. Mark Levin. I think everybody knows who he is. Syndicated, well-known radio show, talk show host, and author of several books. The Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Christopher Ruddy of Newsmax Media. You go to newsmax.com. It's no different than going to the Washington Times. Andrew Breitbart. I was shocked to see that one because he was Breitbarted.
Right.
I don't know why they killed their own guy, but I'm pretty sure that they did it. And I'm looking into that. Michelle Bachmann, who has been recently for the last 2 years complaining about Hillary Clinton when she was in the State Department about her ties to one of her advisors whose two brothers and mother are members of the Muslim Brotherhood. John McCain, and John McCain has that connection that we're going to talk about later on with the fake revolutions.
Not surprised to hear his name, but bummed to hear Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Paul Craig Roberts. Jerome Corsi.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Now, those are just the names that I've found. And researching this, I realized when what we believe is true is coming out of the mouth of an organization that's sole purpose is to simply provide a Christian alternative to the Council on Foreign Relations, and that they state in their mission statement that they are actively propagandizing to, lobbying to members of people in leadership of our nation, or in our nation rather, to promote their values and their ends sought by their individual members. This is a huge problem.
That's very telling. I mean, they just tell you right there, we're here to manipulate people. That's what we do.
Yeah. And people don't know who they are. We talk all the time about the Council on Foreign Relations.
Right.
We don't talk about the guys who are controlling the guys who are telling you about the Council on Foreign Relations.
Right. And you know what? It made me blink when you said something about the liberalism of the Council of Foreign Relations. Like,
yeah.
Not exactly what I would think of as a liberal group.
Right. This is the extreme of the Christian sect. This is, I forgot, Mark Meckler, who is the co-founder and coordinator of the Tea Party Patriots, as well as Jenny Beth Martin, who is co-founder and national coordinator for the Tea Party Patriots. Now, Mark Meckler, okay, so you talk about the Tea Party Patriots were co-opted by the Koch brothers through Mark Meckler.
Yeah.
Well, listen, folks, the Koch brothers are members of the CNP. Mark Meckler is member of the CNP. Mark Meckler co-founded the Tea Party Patriots. So I ask you a question. How can you infiltrate your own group? You can't.
Right.
They created a group and then made it look like they were infiltrated. And now Mark Meckler is on to I know, it's ridiculous, but we fall for this, right? Because we don't know any better. Mark Meckler goes on to the Convention of the States Project, had a representative, Ernest Lee, infiltrate, with the help of a radio show host, infiltrate the Truckers to Shut Down America, which was renamed Ride for the Constitution.
Right.
Ernest Lee is a representative of the Convention of the States Project, which is run by Mark Meckler, who is a member of the CNP. The Convention of the States Project wants to use Article 5 to dig into our U.S. Constitution and start revising it, revamping it. Bad idea, folks.
It's been revised quite a lot.
Their purpose is to have a convention of all the states and another continental Congress.
Wow.
To rewrite the Constitution.
So we can be a Christian nation.
So we can be a Christian nation because they want the agendas of the right. They want to make the right as far right as possible. They were described by the New York Times in 2004 as a little-known club of a few hundred of the most powerful conservatives in the nation who meet behind closed doors in undisclosed locations for confidential conferences to strategize how to turn the country to the right. And they're absolutely right. They meet 3 times a year. We only know this because one of the CNP members said this in an interview, Belant Vasconi, and we don't know where. Nobody knows where they meet. Why? Because they're a real secret group. Folks, people know how to keep secrets. If they tell you about the group, it's because they want you to know. That's not just a cliche in alternative media. It's really true. These guys, we only know that they meet 3 times a year, and there's no way to corroborate that because one of their members said so. And we don't know where they meet, and we haven't had a list, the roster of the attendance of any of their meetings leaked since 1982.
So basically, we now have to widen our scope of those we consider Illuminati.
We have to widen our understanding of the information that's coming to us from news outlets that we consider not mainstream. Period.
Okay, right.
We need to actually do our own research. We need to find out who they have lunch with, who their friends have lunch with, and who they belong to, what groups they belong to, how many degrees of separation. Because what I'm finding with the CNP is either they are members or they're 1 degree of separation from a member. That's it. Not 2, not 6, not 12. 1 degree of separation. That would be tantamount to me owning a corporation that sells widgets. And in order for me to pay my secretary, I need to sell a widget. So I sell a widget. The purchaser puts the money in my account. I immediately write a check and hand it to my secretary. That's 1 degree of separation. This is very, very concerning for me, especially being a member of independent media.
Right.
And seeing that when you get to the top, which I've met everybody there, mostly everybody there. It doesn't feel right. It feels weird. It's just not right. Why do we have so much fear porn? Why are we always being talked to about police state?
I wondered how many more of Alex Jones's regular guests you were going to name.
So far, I've only found those. But like I said, I'm still looking.
I'm actually not surprised by Rand Paul being part of that group at all, because, when you look at the things that he says, in his speeches, it's like, okay, are you into Ayn Rand or do you read the Bible? Like, what is it? Like, his ideologies don't seem to. It's like he's into freedom, but only for him. And if you have a penis, it's like, I'm not surprised. I'm just not.
It hurt my heart when...
I didn't say I was surprised. I said I was bummed, though.
Well, it hurt my heart when I was looking into this and seeing this. The Rockefeller Foundation funded Ludwig von Mises to come to this country. And yes, they cut off funding. And the explanation from the Mises Institute is that Rockefeller didn't want to fund him because he was causing trouble. His ideas were too radical and it wasn't suiting the Rockefeller agenda, so they cut off their funding. But the truth of it is, he got a job at the New York University, and he was never paid by the university. He was paid by private donors.
So someone directed by Rockefeller took up the check.
Sure. Have it funneled through an organization or a gentleman. It's very easy to transfer money from one account to another, folks. It's just numbers on a screen anyway. It's not like somebody drives up with a truck, takes a load of cash, and drives to another location and dumps the load of cash.
Right.
David Rockefeller makes a call, says, I got to take my name off the check. Here, you sign it. Okay.
Gold is a commodity. That's why the price of gold is manipulated twice a day by banks like HSBC, Goldman Sachs, the Federal Reserve, because it's a commodity. People say, well, it holds its value. No, commodities don't hold their value. If it did hold its value, it would not fluctuate. It would be the same forever. Mm-hmm. It goes up and down because it's a commodity, which means that the value of it is based on the market demand for it. And the people who know how to manipulate market demand do so twice a day to skim some money off the top while they know you're long-term investing in their commodity that they have control over ultimately anyway. Don't buy gold. Don't buy silver. Don't use
you need
Bitcoin.
Money for that. Can you buy gold and silver with vegetables?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
I can't do it.
It's like saying that Steve Pachenik is former CFR. No.
Right.
I don't think that happens. You're either a CFR or you're not.
Right.
Mitt Romney is also a member of the CNP.
Right.
And who came out and endorsed Mitt Romney after Ron Paul said that he wasn't actually running for president, he was just taking our money and injecting conversation into the national paradigm?
Who was that?
Rand Paul. The very next day. So Mitt Romney, member for the CNP, is or had up in Utah in Deer Valley a host mixer. So he could get 5 GOP presidential hopefuls for 2016 to schmooze with large donors and gain financially for their campaigns. Isn't he nice? Now, there's a lot of CNP going on at this meeting that they had. Joe Scarborough, who is a former Republican congressman and now broadcaster for MSNBC, is part of the New Federalists, which is associated with the Federalist Society for Law and Public Policy Studies, who have members of the CNP on their board, such as T. Kenneth Cribb. T. Kenneth Cribb is the former advisor to President Reagan, as well as a member of the CNP.
Well, and the gal sitting at his desk every morning on MSNBC is Brzezinski's blood.
Right. Daughter.
So how far is she away from the tree? You know?
Well, here's what's funny. Remember Crossfire?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have Pat Buchanan, member of the CNP, and the other gentleman whose name escapes me was a CFR member.
Mm-hmm.
They're chatting it up.
Yeah. But you basically
opposition. Yeah.
You basically uncovered the meat, or of this upon us left-right paradigm, which doesn't really exist because
it's two wings of the same bird of prey.
Yeah, the psychopaths in charge, they have their men on both sides, so they win no matter what because if the game is fixed.
Yes, absolutely it is.
Yeah.
Edwin Fuellner, who you remember from the list I just read of the members of the CNP, praised Cribb, who is a member of the Federalist Society, who is members of the CNP, calling him the friend in the highest councils of the state during the Reagan administration who was integral in the furtherance of the conservative movement. Isn't that nice? Mm-hmm. So at this meeting, Scarborough was joined by House Representative Paul Ryan and Senator Rand Paul. I haven't found a connection with Paul Ryan to the CNP, but I'm still looking.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Rand Paul has been called as one of the front runners for the GOP nomination for president 2016. And Ron Paul very proudly spoke about that this week, saying that he's proud of his son. And as a father, I'm a mother. I understand being proud of your child. But
yeah.
Ron Paul is 1 degree separation from the CNP, and Rand Paul is directly connected. So I'm very concerned. In 2013, Rand Paul spoke at Freedom Fest, which is founded by Mark Skozen, who has shown up on certain media outlets for interviews. And on their website, Freedom Fest claims that they are an independent, nonpartisan, and not affiliated with any organization or think tank. But Skozen is a member of the CNP, so that's kind of not true.
Right. That's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, kind of. Skozen frequently speaks at events and writes articles for the CNP, while also being the producer of Freedom Fest, an annual conference that they call, quote, the world's largest gathering of free minds on liberty. How is that even possible?
It's just not.
What do they call liberty? Is it the Christian right-wing conservative ideology? Is that liberty? Because that's what they're
liberty for some people.
Well, for those in the club, yeah.
Yeah, and that's all whose liberty they give a shit about. Their own, and their own little group of cronies. Everybody else's liberty, fuck that. Who cares? You know?
The Christians have been targeted in this whole debacle, in this whole creation of propaganda for the Red Team. Right now, if you look on social media, you probably see lots and lots of articles about how Christians are being beheaded and martyred and killed in the Middle East. They're identical stories to what was coming out during Reagan's administration as well, when we were battling the Middle East. Basically, the names have changed, but they're still the same stories. That means that they're probably not true, or they're based on truth, like when they said that the polar bears were dying because of climate change. One polar bear was found, but the World Foundation Fund, or WWF. Yes, the Wildlife Fund. Thank you. They found one bloated polar bear who drowned, and from the one polar bear that drowned, they created the story that all polar bears are dying because they have to swim too far between icebergs, and they can't swim that far, and they die of exhaustion and then ultimately drowned. One polar bear does not constitute an epidemic.
No, not even close. When that's what they're designed to do.
They are the black bear that has whether or not you believe in the evolutionary theory, you know what? Personally, I don't know if I believe it either. But they have webbed feet.
Right.
And they used to be the black bear.
They have adapted to their environment.
Exactly.
Regardless how it has occurred.
Mm-hmm. They're beautiful, so, yeah.
Yes. Well, I have affinity for penguins.
I was having this conversation the other night with somebody. If man came from monkeys, how come we still have monkeys?
Yeah.
Did some of them just not want to change, or what was its next spot down the list that now is a monkey? I don't see a whole lot of even within the evolutionary chain and the fossil records and that, one species becoming another. They adapt to their environment, yes, but they don't change and cross species lines, do they?
No, not unless they come out of a biolab.
Yeah, bing, bing.
GMO.
Absolutely. So let's go into the Las Vegas shooting with Jared and Amanda Miller.
Oh, boy.
Yes. Let's do that.
Now,
because it was happening last time we were talking, and we were saying, something doesn't seem right here. So,
when I saw that, I immediately started looking for a CNP connection, and I found one. So, unfortunately, in alternative circles, the Las Vegas shooting has turned into a martyrdom session for certain members of alternative media who are being targeted, quote unquote. It's hard to target your own people.
But very effective if you decide to play that card.
Exactly, because
it's very influential.
They want you to look crazy. If you believe conspiracy theories, they do. But who are they? They are not the people you think that they are. They are the people who are bringing you the people who talk about the truth. The CNP wants you crazy. The CNP wants you dangerous. The CNP wants to take your guns. So does the CFR. So does the Obama administration. So do all those players. They do. But so does the CNP. And their cronies underneath them who talk to you about what's going on, their perspective of it, pushing you toward radicalization on purpose. Are the right-wing conspiracy theorists being radicalized? Yes. Is it by Al-Qaeda on the internet? No.
No.
Al-Qaeda is CIA.
It's by our alternative media hosts.
It's by our own people. Amanda and Jared are victims of this, in my opinion, because they were radicalized, and they did commit heinous crimes based on their belief. Now, Jared was caught on film with a local reporter from Las Vegas talking when he was on the Bundy Ranch. And Cliven Bundy's son came out immediately after the shootings in Las Vegas and said that they were kicked off because of their extreme views that didn't gel well with the rest of the crowd. So they shoot 2 police officers. They leave Don't Tread on Me and Schwarztickas, and this is the beginning of the revolution, little notices for everyone. Then they go to Walmart. They have a shootout. Some more people die, and Amanda shoots Jared and shoots herself. And Jared, on his Facebook page, which people have taken screenshots and quoted extensively, he had ties to the NRA. He had ties to the Heritage Foundation, and he left comments on AlexJonesInfowars.com speaking about guns and violence. And so Alex Jones is then being targeted as inciting or influencing these two to do that. Yeah, he is, actually. Because Amanda Miller was a longtime employee of Hobby Lobby in Las Vegas. And if you guys remember, I told you to remember Steve Green. President of Hobby Lobby Stores, member of the CNP. Who wants revolution in this country? The CNP.
Yeah,
they
the
have
Christian right.
The Christian right, absolutely. They have John McCain as a member, who is also a member of the International Republican Institute. And I've been speaking about this for a very long time, a couple years. Mostly it started because I named my site Occupy Corporatism, not aligning with the Occupy movement, but everybody assumes that it is. So I wanted to do research on the movement and find out exactly what is going on.
Right.
With movements like Occupy Wall Street and all of the fake revolutions that have gone on all across the world, including Operation American Spring, we have the International Republican Institute, the National Endowment for Democracy, which is where they take yours and my tax dollars to pay for these revolutions. And what the International Republican Institute did in the late 90s, 1998 to 2003, was go to Serbia and watch and speak to the heads of the Optor movement. This was a...
Say that again?
The Optor.
Okay.
O-P-T-O-R. With an exclamation point. And what they did was speak to the leaders. This was a nameless, faceless group. I'm going to say some things that you probably recognize from all of the uprisings, the springs that have gone on. They took their blueprint from Gene Sharp's book, From Dictatorship to Democracy, a conceptual framework for liberation that was based on his thesis paper in 1973 and then later published. Now, since then, in 1983, Sharp founded the Albert Einstein Institute, which is funded by the Ford Foundation, the RAND Corporation, the International Republican Institute, and the National Endowment for Democracy. This is kind of like thanking the dude for giving them the blueprint for foreign policy that they've been using ever since. Now, what did Gene Sharp's book talk about? It's 198 ways to topple your government using nonviolent resistance. Things like putting women and children and pregnant women up at the front of the protest, because back in the late 90s, police officers weren't emptying spray cans of mace or beating down women or children or elderly. To hand the officers who are in combatant to the protesters flowers, or hold a mirror to show them what they look like in their gear. To use the icon of the fist or the peace sign to allow silent communication between members of the revolution so that they know who they're talking to and give signals to each other.
Wow.
To use slogans like, the people demand removal of the regime, and selection is not election, and where is my vote? To use human chains in sit-down demonstrations. To use boycotts. To use using colors like the yellow, the red, and the green revolution. And we've seen a lot of these tactics, banging pots and pans at 6 o'clock when everyone is watching the 6 o'clock news in order to disrupt everyone. But when we see these nonviolent resistance revolutions going on all across the world, we think, oh, great, people are waking up. No, they're not. Look,
they're being manipulated.
Yes, we've all been screwed by our governments and the corporations that fund them and run them, and the bankers who fund and run everything. We've all been screwed. It's really true. But this organization, the International Republican Institute, who is tied directly to the CNP, is out there creating these fake revolutions. Now, they've figured out, by the way, the CNP is also connected through the International Republican Institute to what's going on in the Ukraine. And what they tried to do in Cuba with the Cuban Twitter. Venezuela, Thailand, most recently. Now, the the scariest part about these fake revolutions is that they use what's actually happening in a way in which it's twisted so that you go ahead and go with it and do what they tell you to do. And maybe things that you wouldn't normally do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the tactics that they've used, or decided to use, rather, to make sure that we become violent is the creation of militia movements like Oath Keepers.
Right.
In the late 90s, or the mid-90s rather, Larry Pratt, who is Gun Owners for America, and a founding member of the CNP and longstanding member, talking about how the blueprint for creating a militia out of the Sandinistas that later became the Iran-Contra scandal with a member of the CNP, Ollie North.
Yep. Oliver North.
And by the way, H.L. Hunt was one of the philanthropist billionaires who was funding this movement when the government, Reagan, decided that they were going to stop. And there was big to-do back then, if you remember. Is it okay for private organizations or private people to fund civil wars in other countries? Should we allow that?
Yeah.
We never answered that question.
Right. Right.
So Larry Pratt said that the blueprint that they learned from changing the Sandinistas to militias, all the training and with strategy and military understanding and guns, Larry Pratt said that he wanted that blueprint to be used here in the United States to create militia groups to foster a revolution here, to get the country back on track with the Christian conservative right-wing agenda. So
amazing.
About a decade or a little bit over a decade later. I'm sorry?
Yeah. So it's not grassroots at all.
No.
It's completely and totally manipulated.
Now the problem is the Bundy Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
One radio host called on national television. He was put on television in markets from Key West, Florida, to Boston, Massachusetts, and as far inland as Chicago, Illinois, as well as on satellite television. And this person was successful calling for militias to come help the Bundys, and then that call was answered within 24 hours. And over the totality of the standoff, from the time the call was made and up until the standoff and maybe a few days, maybe half a week later, there were about 2,000 militia members from various organizations, including Oath Keepers, who showed up. Now, that's a small number if you think about it, but it's very impressive because next time, and there will be a next time, will we double or quadruple that number? Will it be 6,000 that show up?
Most likely, because what they presented through this manipulated act was successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the BLM stood down.
Right.
They were successful.
So now it looks they're totally a pro wrestling work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The bad guy took the shot in the nuts and got pinned. Oh, my. Tune in next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the right Occupy, right? The militias are the right Occupy.
I'm not sure. What Larry Pratt wanted was an organized army of civilians who would fight for the right-wing conspiracy, conservative Christian movement. And they exist now. What's funny is, watching this Larry Pratt speaking at a lecture about this over a decade ago, and here I am a decade later in the future for him, and he's speaking as if he's talking now. That scared me.
Mm-hmm.
Because how did he know? Well, of course he knew. Mm-hmm. He's part of the CNP.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's creepy. So here
Very
I am.
much so.
His vision is now my reality. And what does that mean? Mm-hmm. That means that Amanda and Jared Miller are victims. They were brainwashed into doing something because they really believed in it, and they killed people. Now, would they have killed people before? I don't know. But I don't think so. We're not naturally that violent. When we're pushed to, I've got a friend who is a broadcaster, and she talks about, well, you know, they stick your finger in your chest enough times, you're going to grab their hand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's make sure that the revolution that happens in this country, if there is one, is for our purposes and not theirs, because right now we're following their script. And if we do that, here's what we have to look forward to. Let's go back to the fake revolutions all over the world. Stability operations with DynCorp and Blackwater.
Right.
IMF and the World Bank coming in and loaning money because the revolution is going to cause a lot of problems with our infrastructure and destroy a lot of property, and we need money. And we'll use our natural resources as collateral. And a PASI, or a transitional council, like what they had in Libya, which is made up of de facto terrorist organizations who happen to have a seat at the UN, so they're legitimate.
So anything that would happen in America, like the American Spring, would be replaced by the American Taliban. They want Christian law. They want the Christian version of Sharia law instituted. Government. They want state and they want the government and religion to be one. That's what they want.
But
well, see, I wouldn't even call them Christian. I would see these as the exact same as the Zionists who hide amongst the Jews.
Sure. Same
thing.
This
is a group of people who revere and support financially and otherwise Reverend Moon. Mm-hmm. So Trinity Broadcasting Network, the head of it, who just passed away, and Benny Hinn, no, it's crap. CBN by Pat Robertson, crap. Mm-hmm. James Dobson, who is very big in the crap. Mm-hmm. Joel Osteen, garbage. CNP connected, 1 degree of separation. And he was just recently talking about revolution. It was in the news 2 days ago. I saved the article. Because as I'm learning about the CNP, I'm recognizing it as it comes out in the media when they talk about certain things. I go and look it up, and they're either a member of the CNP talking about it or 1 degree of separation talking about it. So I've got this huge file now of all this information. I don't know what I'm going to do with it all.
Amazing.
This is extremely important for anyone who does not follow the mainstream paradigm, who doesn't vie for the blue team anymore. Because we have our own jerseys and we have our own propaganda arm that is controlling the way in which we perceive our government, the people running our government, Hillary Clinton. Okay, so we get the Clinton body count from the Clinton Chronicles, who is produced by a CNP member. How much of the Clinton body count is true, folks?
Right.
You got to ask yourself that. I know that she's not a good person. How much of the conspiracy that we can't prove, that we can only go by theory and somebody else's word, and
that we refute because someone, a broadcaster of the alternative media, said it.
Mm-hmm. We have to stop doing this. These
are the lords of perception.
Yes.
These are the real lords of perception. You've uncovered that, lifted the veil. Who are the lords of perception? It's these motherfuckers right here.
Absolutely. Now, I'll give you an example of how movements can be completely co-opted and infiltrated and created by the people that are supposedly against what you're standing for. Mm-hmm. Label it GMO and the entire GMO label movement. Mm-hmm. This is a scheme concocted by the biotech industry and Monsanto, DuPont, and manufacturers of GMO seed, because it's not just Monsanto.
Right.
And they have created this movement in order to make sure that GMO is labeled. Why do they want GMO labeled?
Money, 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 money.
Absolutely. But see,
pay up.
Japan, France, the UK, and China, they all said, get your GMO out of here. Okay, so the U.S. is one of their biggest customers. They don't want to lose that. So they're willing to make what seems to you a concession or a compromise in order to get you to do something that they want you to do.
To do anyway.
Right, because they're going to win anyway. Here's how they're going to win. Members of the food industry have the biotech industry organization who represents Monsanto and DuPont and Dow Chemical and the National Corn Growers Association, National Restaurant Association, National Beverage Association, you name it. They've been spending at least $6 million to bribe members of Capitol Hill to support labeling GMO under their conditions. What they want are congressmen to force the Food and Drug Administration to allow them to create the guidelines for the new labels that the manufacturers of food would be using. And they have proposed that processed food giants be given the voluntary labeling of genetically modified foods as the only option. So they don't have to. It's a voluntary process. Now, people are saying that this is to preempt states who consider legislation, and Vermont just passed one.
Right.
Maine and Connecticut have been waiting. They've got some on the table, but they wanted to see what was going on with the state of Vermont. And right now, members of the food industry are suing the state of Vermont over the legislation. And I've read it. It's not the greatest piece of legislation. Their definition of genetically modified organism or bioenhanced food ingredients is very vague, and there's lots of room for loopholes. But that's just a side note. With labeling GMO and a voluntary guideline mandate from the Food and Drug Administration, the corporations, the biotech corporations, get to decide whether or not you know that there's GMO in there, and it's completely legal. Now, how are they controlling the other side of this? Well, the last March Against Monsanto in Richmond, Virginia, Renew Richmond was a nonprofit organization that supported and organized the rally for March Against Monsanto in Richmond, Virginia. And Renew Richmond is directly connected monetarily and otherwise to 4-H. Now, why is 4-H bad? Well, because a couple of years ago, Monsanto combined forces with 4-H to market to the 6.8 million children ages 5 to 21 in nearly every county in the U.S. and in more than 80 countries worldwide about the not-so-dangerous GMO. So Renew Richmond, who is run by John Lewis, the director of the organization, and a staunch supporter of labeling GMO. In fact, when he spoke to the protesters who joined the rally, by the way, their route was redirected at the last minute away from the public, down back alleys, and to a deserted park. So it was basically made ineffectual.
Right.
And John Lewis spoke to the audience about how we need to push for labeling in our states. We need to label the GMO. We need to get as many states as possible on this initiative. But when the FDA puts down their mandates, it negates all of the states' efforts. And if we have separate states labeling GMO, we have separate rules and regulations and legislation as to what is GMO and what is bioenhanced. So we've got a big problem because, folks, most of our food travels at least across one state line, if not 10.
Right.
Or international. So where does the legislation stop and start? It's a mess. But see, Monsanto wins either way. We don't need to label the GMO. We need to get rid of it.
Get it out of the food supply, period. Because labeling is not even going to help because it spreads like a virus.
Well, it's a nice idea, in this twisting of ideas, because there's a public perception that if the GMO is labeled, now I can buy safe food.
Right.
Right.
When that is not the case at all.
No.
Nor is
because
it
even if it's labeled, you won't know what is in there. If GMO ingredients were used, the corporation does not have to disclose it unless they voluntarily choose to.
So they get to write their own legislation like all the other corporations.
Absolutely. And once it's federal, all the states, their legislation becomes moot because federal supersedes.
We'll be back, brothers and sisters, here on The Bridge. Welcome back to The Bridge, where we have our special guest, Susanne Posel, informing us of that which might kind of kick us in the gut, but we need to know. Here's your host, Kira Young.
Thank you, Swami. And thank you so much, Susanne, for joining us today. This is really an incredible conversation that we're having, and the thing that I really like about it is that it confirms what a lot of us felt, but we didn't know for sure because we didn't have the information. But it felt engineered. All of these different scenarios that we're talking about all felt engineered, but we didn't. You're actually uncovering the meat behind it. So, thank you.
Thank you. It's my job. I'm not paid by anyone. I'm not co-opted. I don't associate with any of the co-opted. I've publicly disassociated myself from the co-opted because when I started writing articles, I thought we were exposing corruption. I really did.
Right.
I didn't realize that we were creating the corruption. So I'm not part of that. I'm not part of the alternative media. I barely refer to myself as independent because that's being messed up by some members of alternative media who are selling you freedom for anywhere from $25 to $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any products to sell. I don't want you to donate to me. I want you to change our world because as a journalist, I understand that information is only good in the hands of people who can do something about it. And so you can do something about this. Everything that I've just talked about for the last hour, you can do something about this. Now that you know, take it a step farther. The Council for National Policy's website is cfnp.CharlesFrancisNancyPaul.org. Go to their website. They've got a little search bar on the top right. Put in a name, any name. In fact, that's what I'm doing. When I found Andrew Breitbart, I was just putting in names random. Anyone's name I could find. I was shocked that Andrew Breitbart was a member of the CNP because I don't understand that yet. Why he was killed and why his story was created into a martyr mythology. I'm not quite clear on. I'm sure that there's a lot of theories, and your audience is probably mulling over it right now. I don't know. I'm interested in facts. If you go to my website, OccupyCorporatism.com, you're not going to get conjecture. You're not going to get opinion. I don't care about theories. I want to know what actually happened because what actually happened has an actual solution. Not what we theorize about Malaysian Flight 370. Now all of a sudden the EU Times, which by the way is a tabloid newspaper, just like the Mirror and the Daily Mail over in the UK, they're known as tabloids, like the Weekly World News, okay? But over here we're just dumb. So the EU Times said that, and a couple of other, ABC said this as well, I'm not just picking on the EU Times, that 13 flights were missing from the radar for 25 minutes, and then they popped back in. And this could be tied into how they lost the plane with Malaysian Flight 370. Listen, folks, you can't take alleged evidence of a supposed scenario, post-scenario, and then attribute it backwards in time. That's not even scientific. It doesn't even make any sense. If you have a theory, you try to prove the theory. If you can't prove the theory, you have to scratch the theory, throw it away, and start again. Or look at the evidence and see what you actually have and postulate a new theory. Like, let's take electricity and our sun and our solar system. I'm very interested in the electric universe theory. I don't know if either of you have ever heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fascinating. There is actual proof that our universe is electric, that the sun is electric. It's not helium. It's not a nuclear reaction going on in there. It's electricity. The solar wind, they call it a wind so that you think about the winds down here. That's not what it is. It is a filamentary connection of electricity from our sun to our planet and various other planets in our solar system.
Wow.
The plasma that they find evidenced in the double helix-like filaments that they regularly take photographs of in our universe, like the Crab Nebula and the Eagle Nebula.
Mm-hmm.
These are actually, it's not dust out there in space. It's not leftover like dust, like you think of dirt and dust in your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a plasma discharge phenomenon happening in our universe. Gravity is not what we think it is. It is the connection with the filaments of electricity from our sun and interplanetary, the idea that or the effect that we see, that we call gravity. Einstein was wrong. And Einstein said himself, there's lots of holes in my theory, so if you find something that proves me wrong, you have to scrap what I said and start over again. And unfortunately, we don't do that. Because if it's an electrical universe, then we have strange phenomenons like solar storms and solar wind, quote unquote,
that we can't, that we cannot compare to the phenomena we witnessed riding this ball through space.
Right.
Right.
They want to simplify everything to that which we naturally observe and take the actual wonder out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They do. And they don't want us to understand how it all works. Because part of the electric universe theory, and this is based on what we see, not seeing what we see and then trying to get it to fit our paradigm or explaining away. You can go to Thunderbolts Project on YouTube, watch all of their lectures. It's amazing stuff. It's all scientifically proven. We are not, climate change is not what you think it is. Obviously, you've heard that before, but this is a phenomenon of the electrical relationship we have with our sun. It happens every 180 years. It caused the fall of Rome. It caused the mini ice age where people were skating on the Thames.
Right.
Just recently, researchers at Reading University noticed that there was a correlation between solar wind, which is actually an electric current between the sun and the earth, and the increase of lightning strikes here on the planet. Well, that makes sense if you understand electric universe theory, because it's transmitting electricity from itself to us. And what doesn't get pushed out by our magnetosphere becomes part of our atmosphere and is affected and creates lightning. Lightning is electricity.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So with climate change, and we are going into another ice age. We are at the beginning stages of it. If you go to weatheraction.com, this gentleman who has been, he's spoken at the UN and been rejected for many years, but he's an accomplished writer, and he's been predicting, and all of his predictions have come true, using the electric universe theory as the model for his predictions. And what he is saying is, and I cannot remember his name right now. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. It's escaping me. What he's talking about is the ice age that we're going into. How everything is going to get colder and colder. And we see that. Nemo, the blizzard, right? And then the year before that,
And the Great Lakes, they just became ice-free a couple of days ago, and they had to use ice-breaking boats in order to break it up so that it would melt. And it's June, folks. So
right.
Well, and I remember not long ago putting a little photo on my Facebook with the tag on there saying, somebody remind me of that part in global warming where we get snow on the pyramids and the Sphinx.
Right. Yeah.
Yet, there was a photograph of snow on the pyramids and the Sphinx. That's not supposed to happen.
Right.
There's weather damage surrounding the Sphinx. So obviously there was moisture in the air, precipitation most likely.
Right.
Now we blame a lot of phenomena.
South.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I live in the South. I mean, I live in Virginia on the West Virginia border, and we had a heck of a winter here. It snowed every week. It snowed all the time, and it was cold. We had snowy owls flying around, and they were saying on the news they came down with the polar vortex.
And who the hell had ever heard those two words put in that order on a U.S. weather forecast before last winter?
Right.
When the lows dipped very dramatically, like we saw with the polar vortex, this is in response on our planet, and it's been documented in the records that we've been keeping, that when it dips down, this correlates with a freezing of northern hemisphere down far. We see, you mentioned the Great Lakes, it's probably going to go down a little bit farther. And look at what happened with the mini ice age. It's the exact same thing. The northern hemisphere with the lows dipped down as far as we see with all the way down to like Florida. They're dipping down now. Longer, colder winters, shorter summers. This will affect and is affecting our ability to grow food in our bread baskets. It is affecting and continues to affect the drought and precipitation levels in certain areas, causing drought in California, causing torrential downpours on the East Coast, which we've seen this year.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I live in a jungle, where I am. And I'm in a woodland area, in eastern woodland area. And there's a lot of I'm seeing new plants and I feel like I'm in a jungle. There's lots of viney things that weren't growing here a few years. I mean, there's vines that grow here, but there's more. It's like things that are, just wet. It's just very wet.
I live in the cornfields of Illinois, and I was noticing today while making a long drive, everything's awfully short for this time of year. So it must be that, I mean, I haven't followed this, but I can only reason that crops were very late getting in the ground this year.
Yeah.
Which means the harvest will be not good.
Right.
Animals and plants, they know. They migrate farther. We see evidence of that. We misconstrue that evidence because we're not aware of the electric universe theory, so we believe whatever conspiracy is out there. And the conspiracies are plausible. I'm not saying that HAARP is not doing bad, nefarious things. I've looked at the patent. I know what it's capable of. But this is not HAARP moving storms. This is not HAARP directing Katrina. It's been recorded that during this time, right before a mini ice age, we have larger, more extreme weather, larger, more extreme storms. We've seen evidence of this. The north is colder. We're not able to get our crops in on time, like you were mentioning.
Yeah.
People starved to death during the last mini ice age, and it happens every 180 years. You can go back in the record and look. So it's not you, it's not CO2, it's not your car, and your car is not causing autism. Don't believe that either.
I hadn't heard that one. What?
Yeah, they're trying to claim carbon. If you live next to a highway and your child breathes in the pollution from the cars, that it causes autism.
Goodness.
Okay.
They'll come up with anything.
Well, sure.
Yep. People are trying to understand.
Our SUV is making it heat up on Mars, you know.
Absolutely. Yep. Mars has scarring from the positioning of the planets. Were not always in the position they are now. Mm-hmm. And the Thunderbolts Project has a great film called Symbols of an Alien Sky. I've watched it so many times, my kids are sick of it. But what they talk about is symbology. And I remember reading Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces and watching his series on mythology. Big fan of his. Trying to understand what the ancient people were seeing. Where is Zeus? Where is Thor? Where is Minerva? Right. What happened? What they explain is through all of the cultures, whether they knew each other or not, whether they were exposed to each other or not, all have the same symbology around the same time, and figurehead myths that do the exact same things.
Yeah.
And it's because they saw it in the sky. They saw the planetary shifts with Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and everyone else move into the positions that we see them now.
Lakota villages were modeled after the star map.
And Native American cultures have the same symbology. The cosmic wheel. The headdress of Venus with the big white frill, and it's like a shell. And we see the Venus de Milo coming out of a shell.
Right.
They were trying to describe what they were seeing in the sky, and they described it in the mythology. Now, this would have caused a shift in our magnetic poles, which would have probably tilted the Earth, causing a flood. And if you go to weatheraction.com, you can read about the gentleman that I was talking about, that I can't remember his name, describing and explaining how it makes perfect sense. And then when you go back into the ancient texts and you look, even as far back with Gilgamesh, it's the same story over and over again.
Right.
So this electrical phenomenon happened in our skies. And the people who were alive at the time were trying to explain what happened. And so we have Zeus and we have Thor, and we have Quetzalcoatl and everybody else. But they were seeing the planetary shift into the position that the planets are now riding on now. So,
and people back then looked to the skies more because they weren't inside their lighted homes. They spent the evenings looking at the stars and looking at everything going on up there. Every little detail.
Sure, because they understood that we are, regardless of what you believe, we're all connected to everything.
We're in a system.
Yeah.
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 You're stuck in it whether you want to be or not. Close yourself up in your little house and sit and jerk off to YouPorn if you want, but you're still within a system, an enormous system, which has cyclical activity.
Everything affects everything else. The butterfly effect. If you want to use
the sacred web.
The sun is plasma. The stars are plasma. Galaxies are plasma. The filaments are magnetized and radiating matter between stars and between galaxies. That is plasma. The web of electromagnetism connecting the planets and the moon and the sun and the stars and the galaxy are plasma. It's not dark matter. It's plasma.
Right.
So when you understand this, you understand what's going on with your climate. I suggest you go and look it up. And you don't have to worry about the Coke industries talking. And by the way, CNP members, talking about how climate change is not man-made. And then you have Al Gore's group of minions talking about how it is. Well, don't even fall into that. That's blue team, red team.
Yeah.
Okay, step away from that. It's the sun. It's the cycle of our galaxy, of our solar system. It's natural. We need to prepare for it because it's going to get colder longer and it's going to get hotter shorter.
Right. And nothing we do here will affect it either way.
Exactly. Now, I'm not telling you to just, be crazy and go and buy MREs or anything like that. Absolutely not. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't go out and buy more ammunition. We're not talking about that. Look back in history. Look to the Ice Age during go back every 180 years and look at these ice ages and see what was going on, because that's what we have today. Now, we live in a technological society which puts us at a disadvantage as opposed to what happened even 180 years ago, because we're dependent on electricity. And this is an electrical phenomenon. How that's going to affect our technological society, I'm not quite clear. So I never make predictions. You're never going to get that out of me, because I don't know, and you don't know, and nobody knows until it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
We're just riding this big ball spinning through space, and that's really about the best we can lock in.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. The CNP, Council for National Policy, please go look this up. There's a gentleman who did several documentaries, Josh Reeves. The Secret Right is the name of the first 2-hour documentary, and then there's a volume 2, which is an hour long. I suggest you watch it. He did a very good job of capturing the footage from the 80s, the old television footage from interviews and news reports about the CNP and what they do and what their members do and what their agendas are about. And I'm in the process of vetting all of his information and trying to get a hold of him, actually, so I can talk to him. Because what I'm seeing is he put out these documentaries several years ago, but since then the CNP has been working their magic toward a violent end. See, you've got the red team with their militias and their armies, and then the blue team has been putting together their scary police state and all these new gadgets that they're giving the police officers, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the other guys say, okay, you got what you wanted, you've got a militia going, you've got a civilian army going, okay, so we have to defend ourselves. And I'm not justifying the police state at all. I'm just saying this is what's this is what you're seeing. Your interpretation of police state is erroneous because it's coming out of members of the CNP mouth or their talking heads' mouths. So you've got two factions gearing up for a fight and using you on either side of the team to be the ones to fight for it.
Right, because their thing doesn't work if the fight doesn't happen.
Right, and what do they want? They want stability operations the day after the revolution. Okay, nobody talks about that. The day after the revolution, let's go back to the other Arab Springs and all the other fake revolutions we've seen. Right. Stability operations, IMF and the World Bank, patsy government. How do you destroy the constitutional republic once and for all? You have a second revolution here in this country. I know that we're all pissed off. I know that we're all disenfranchised. I know that we lost our homes, we lost our jobs, we don't have any rights anymore. I know. It's angering to me too, but I promise you that violent revolution is not the answer because it's their engineered revolution, so you're fighting for them. You're not fighting for yourself.
Absolutely.
So when you're done fighting, if you survive, you're under their rule, not yours.
We have to build community. Support one another as best we can.
I'm going to throw this little idea out because people say, oh, non-compliance. Non-compliance, it doesn't have a logo, it doesn't have a T-shirt, it doesn't have a bumper sticker, it doesn't have products for you to buy. In fact, don't buy products. Okay, non-compliance, it's not popular. But non-compliance is what we need to do, folks, and I'll explain it to you. The AP, the Associated Press, did a study that I reported on because they saw that $3 trillion were taken out of the global economy by Americans, by you and I, because we're broke. Since 2008, we don't have enough money to buy excess or any extras, so we only buy what we need. And so we've taken $3 trillion out of the global economy. Now, in the study, the IMF and the World Bank said that they were concerned that this would become a trend. Well, if they're concerned that we're taking money out of the global economy because we're broke, let's do that consciously, because apparently it works. And I'll go back to the evangelical Christians for a minute. When they boycott any retail store, and they all get together and do it, all of a sudden the retail store acquiesces as soon as their profits go down. Monsanto wants to label it because it keeps their profits up, because other countries are telling them, no, we don't want your GMO. Who are they going to sell it to? So let's be smart about this, folks. Let's take our money out of the global economy. Let's stop supporting the big box stores. Let's stop buying things that we don't need and buy things that we do need.
And buy
Let's
local.
start being, I'm sorry?
And buy local. Buy
local, my God, please. Your local farmer, set up a community-supported agriculture box. It is CSA. If your farmer doesn't have it, talk to them about it. You will pay about $300, maybe $500 up front. I know that's a big deal to shell up front, but think about it. Every week for the next 3 to maybe 6 months during the season, if it extends into the winter months, you will get a fresh box of food delivered to you or to a location that you can get to in your city or town. And some of these community-supported agriculture programs co-opt with local ranchers, and you can get meat. You can get local organic processed foods like salsas. You can get dairy products like raw cheese and milk. You want to do this. Give the money to the butchers in your community. Give them to the ranchers. Don't make them go to the farmer's market, because they spend $300 to $700 just to have that little spot there. Okay? It's not fair.
Right.
Flip off Walmart as you drive by to go see your neighbor and do some business.
Absolutely. Shop at your local stores. I know that it's a little bit expensive. They set it up that way. They set it up so that we complain about how much things cost. And I was speaking on Jack Blood's show a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this exact topic. And he brought up, oh, well, it's really expensive to buy organic food, and, people can't afford it. We're all on a tight budget. I said, well, here's a little, you just consider this, okay? I'm not telling you to do anything. Just consider it. Let's say you spend $200 a month in your health care premium, which is going to kill you anyway because it's management, not curing you. Why don't you take that $200 and reallocate that money back to your food bill? Spread it out over 4 weeks. Now you've got an extra $50 to buy good organic food. Think about it. You're investing.
Which you will need less mass of because it's nutrient dense.
Exactly.
Right.
Now be careful, because when we label things organic here in this country, this goes back to mandates and guidelines set up by Codex Alimentarius, which is a UN operation. And it says that right on the USDA website, by the way. So Codex Alimentarius, what do they say? Nutrients, minerals, vitamins, all of that stuff is bad for the human body. And in excess quantities, it causes disease and death. So you have to eat. So you have to eat as little of the nutrients as possible to maintain a healthy lifestyle. So when we say that, it's stamped with USDA organic, it must be organic, I wouldn't even, I would take that with a grain of salt, folks.
Yeah.
Get to know your farmer. Find out what they use. Do they use neem or beneficial bugs, or do they use a hopped-up version of a pesticide? How do they treat their animals? Are they actually free-range? Do they get to roam, or are they given a bigger cage to run around in? Are they grass-fed, and is that natural grass, or is it AstroTurf? I'm not joking. I've heard of stories where ranchers try to reseed their grass areas with GMO seeds. So, and it's grass-fed.
Yeah. And barter.
Learn how to sew a button on a shirt. Learn how to cook your own food. If you get the family involved, you can spend an hour with your kids and your husband or your wife or whatever, and have a great time, and then, I don't know, set the table. Does anybody remember doing that?
Barely.
It's not just a place to make piles.
Really?
Yes. Well, it's kind of both, you know.
Right. It's not a relic from times past.
Right, no, this is only for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's not just for Thanksgiving.
Meanwhile, we've got the TV trays in the front room.
Yes.
Right.
I got rid of my television a decade ago. I suggest you do the same, but that's just me.
Yeah. Yep.
Know what's in your food. Know what aspartame does to you. Truvia can be used as a pesticide. Don't consume it.
Yep.
Stevia is derived from a plant in South America that was traditionally used as a contraceptive. Don't consume it unless you've already had your tubes tied or you're in your later stage and you don't care about having children. But don't give it to your children because you're sterilizing them.
Oh, now see, I never knew about that. Here, I thought Stevia was a worthy replacement.
My mother is diabetic. My mother's diabetic, and she uses Splenda and Stevia products because she's diabetic. Now, she's in her late 60s, so we're not concerned about her getting pregnant.
Right.
But you want to think about that. Parabens, they're in most of your toiletries. They are found when they do biopsies of breast tumors, including male breast tumors, by the way. That's rising, folks, so it's not just the women. Don't shut off, guys. They find that these tumors are 99% paraben. Where do we find parabens? In your shampoo. It's in all of those micro scrubbing beads, like St. Ives and all those scrubbing bubble thingies that have the little hard spots in them. That's parabens. It's in the Desitin baby cream. It's in formula. It's in shampoos, conditioners, hair care products, face cleansers. When my husband and I found out about parabens, it was even in the silver nitrate that my son was prescribed by his pediatrician.
Oh, wow.
We threw away in one night 90% of our toiletries when we found out about parabens. And I had to go the next day and I even went to health foods and other stores like that, Trader Joe's, to find products that don't have parabens. And guess what? I found the parabens at Trader Joe's and at Whole Foods. Had a hard time. Now, what was funny to me was Suave does not have parabens.
The cheap stuff.
The really, really cheap stuff did not have parabens.
Yeah.
St. Ives does. I could not find a facial cleanser that did not have parabens. So unfortunately, I scrubbed my face the hard way.
Wow. 35 minutes now after the hour. We're going to take another little short music break. Here's your host, Kira Young.
Thank you, Swami, and thank you so much, Suzanne. This is a great conversation. Again, it's very enlightening and very confirming to, like I said, feelings, but you're uncovering the facts, and we need more than feelings. We need facts, and we need solutions. We need more than spelling out what the problem is. We need to spell out the solution. And my mantra is noncompliance as well. It works for me.
Yeah, I got rid of my bank accounts. I just wrote an article last week about how Chase Bank has decided to charge you money for depositing cash into your account, and someone sent me their bank statement where this was spelled out in their new processing fees that were going to be implemented August 1st of this year.
Wow.
Now, I couldn't find anywhere on their website where they talk about these cash processing fees, but this was a bank statement.
Of course not. They're not going to ask for your permission to do it.
Get your money out of the bank, people, please. It's safer underneath your mattress than it is as a digital icon on a screen.
Yeah. And I don't have very much of it, but I try to use as much cash as I can. And you'll find that they're trying to really eliminate that.
They are, because they're moving to a digital currency. Both MasterCard and Visa both said that by October 2015 in the United States, which we don't currently have, we will have the chip-to-PIN, which I know they have in Canada and the UK. And when I spoke to a friend of mine who's a broadcaster in Canada, he said, "What, you don't have this? I didn't realize you didn't have this. This chip-to-PIN is a step into the digital currency, along with the other, fun digital currencies like Bitcoin, who is insured by Credit Suisse and the Central Bank of France, and Credit Mutuel. They have a international banking ID number, which is only given to banks.
So the alternative currency is just as alternative as the alternative media.
Yes.
Right.
But they just opened an ATM machine in Las Vegas to use Bitcoin. It'll transfer your cash to Bitcoin or your Bitcoin to cash. So, if you want to be trendy, or Dogecoin, it's the same thing. They got lots and lots of spin-offs.
Right.
They give you the alternative because they know if you have 2 minutes to yourself, you'll come up with a concept and start implementing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of deflating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just always had a bad feeling about Bitcoin, but now it's
when I write about Bitcoin, I always get attacked. So I haven't written about Bitcoin in a while. But those articles are up on my website, Occupy Corporatism. You can look them up.
And the suicides in quotation, the Bitcoin suicide, full that are ending up dead in that arena as well.
Well, the problem with that is we don't know why. We have theories and conjecture.
Right. We don't know.
Now, some of the people in alternative circles who tell you to buy cryptocurrencies own cryptocurrencies themselves. Some people who tell you to buy silver own silver brokerages themselves, so they make money off of when you buy silver to give the sum to J.P. Morgan. You're not giving the sum to anybody because they control the markets. It's a commodity, like I said before. They control it.
Right.
You're not
Silver
investing in anything.
once a day.
Twice.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
There was a gentleman in New York who filed a lawsuit against HSBC and Bank of America because he had invested in gold, and he found through analyzing his statements that he proved that they were manipulating the price in the morning around 8 to 11 a.m., and then again in the evening between 4 and 6 or between 3 and 5. And they were just caught again. I wrote an article 2 weeks ago. They were caught again, the same banks that this man implicated, and a few more for rigging the prices of gold twice a day.
We got room for area code 208, Kara?
Suzanne, do you want to take a call?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
208, you're on the air.
Hi there. It's Melanie.
Hi, Melanie.
How you guys doing?
Don't we sound just cheery?
You guys sound like you guys are having a great conversation.
We are. We are really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So,
I actually was going to call in because you guys started talking about really trying to pay attention to what's around you locally and try to do business with those around you locally. And I was wondering if we could go back to that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I was going to ask, have you guys found that, I don't know how each of you finds it to be, but maybe even Suzanne might have found it to be for her, but do you find that it's easier to find those folks that you need to do your local business with, or do you find it harder to find them now?
Yeah, I live in a small town. There's about 13,000 people here. And it's very easy to find a local hardware store or even a local grocer, even though there are the big box stores around here and they're easily accessible. But when I was living in the city, it became a trendy thing to do. We were living in Beaverton, Oregon before, and farmers markets, it was all very trendy, and so everybody got out their trendy outfits and felt good about themselves showing up at the farmers market, which kind of disgusted me.
Right.
Are you from here in the Northwest, Susanne?
I'm actually from Florida. I was born and raised in Florida.
Okay.
My husband's from Washington, so I moved here to be with him, and I enjoy it more than I did Florida. I don't like Florida. It's too hot.
Well, I'm over here in my phone number says 208, but I'm actually over here by Salem, Oregon. So
I'll be in Salem, Oregon on the 28th.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to Free Salem, which is at Duffy's Hangar, and I'll be speaking at 5 o'clock if you want to come and join us.
Is that a Saturday? Because if it is, then I think I'm actually going to be over in Forest Grove, actually.
It is a Saturday.
Yeah. Is it during the day? Or did you say it was during the daytime?
It is. It's from about, I think, 11 a.m. till about 9 or 10 o'clock. I'll be speaking at about 5 p.m.
Well, maybe I can catch you before
music
that.
And food and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well, maybe I can catch you before in, like, the morning hours and stuff. That would be great to say hi. Well, yeah, I find, for me personally, because I live out here in the country, that I can actually go to, you see cows in somebody's yard or out in their, pasture. You can usually walk up and knock on the door. Ask them if they're selling their beef, and that's easy for some of us who are kind of out there doing that. But what I find, the deeper you go into the cities and stuff, is it's almost like a desert for finding the right stuff. You're almost at the mercy of going to your Whole Foods market. You're also at the mercy of your big natural food box stores. While I understand the purposes of those,
you can still sign up for those community farm boxes when you live, well, at least in some western cities, the Bay Area and places like that, Seattle. And probably your way as well. You can still do that.
For me, it's easy to go out and find it because I am in a small town. I do notice that there's always been these challenges to try to maintain your home, try to maintain your food with everything within 150 miles of you. There's kind of been these challenges that I've seen. It is. It really is.
It's a full-time job.
And it also teaches us to plan ahead. I mean, it's a good thing. It teaches us to plan ahead.
Yeah.
It teaches us that maybe because something's not in season, maybe it's not really a need, and maybe it's something more of a want, and you have to start to determine what you're really doing it for. Are you doing it for the ease and convenience, or are you doing it because you really just want to feed your family and do what you can? That's what I'm finding with it. I find that people get really bent out of shape when they start going to their Whole Foods markets and they pull out a bag of strawberries that say organic on them, and then they get upset when they read that they're from China. And
right.
And people don't realize that what they're actually doing by expecting convenience, that they're actually compromising their local growers. And not relying on that and not planning ahead. So anyway, I just was kind of just wanting to mention that because a lot of people don't think about they're so used to convenience that, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes to preparing and things. Just an observation.
Do you want to add anything, Melanie, about the 4-H, your 4-H experiences and what you learned?
Oh yeah. I don't know if Susan has ever heard of the National Animal Identification System. Have you ever heard of that?
Is that where they put the RFID chips in the pets in case you lose them?
That's not. Yeah, it's actually it's kind of like that. They're like that, but what they are is that you have to do it to every single farm animal if you're a small farm, and you have to do it nationally. It would be a national program, but the only ones that don't have to do that for every animal are the big producers. They can do like 1 animal per 100 for a lot of them. And anyway, it had tried to go through back in 2006, and it's actually a very real thing that was trying to be introduced through 4-H. And I actually caution people, if they don't want to have government big in their farm life, in their hobby farms and things like that, to stay as far away from 4-H as possible. It is a government program through the USDA, and when you join those, they actually want you to get signed up with the NAIS, which is the National Animal Identification System. It has failed, but they keep trying to find new ways to bring it back in. So I would strongly caution anybody who's involved in 4-H to, try to scrap that idea, because what happens is they can actually come on your property, USDA, the government, can actually come onto your property at any time, scan your animal, and if they so determine that they want it, they take it, and they can do whatever they want with it. So they can kill it, they can keep it, they don't have to release it back to you. Once you're involved in that program, you cannot get back out. This is a very real thing, and people were kind of all, they get the conspiracy theorists out there get kind of crazy about it, because they say, what's next, your children and things like that. And it's like, well, let's not go that route, but let's say that your animals are your livelihood, and that means that at any moment the government can walk in and take your livelihood. That's enough.
Well, they've already got that executive order covering resources in the United States, which means that any produce or any animal property on your land, regardless who's holding the note on it, goes under the purview of the Secretary of Agriculture.
Yeah, but they don't know about it unless you report it through 4-H programs. They don't know about the animals that you have or the produce that you have unless you let some sort of government organization know about it. There's no record.
That's right. This is a voluntary program.
The non-compliance. Yeah. That's the non-compliance piece of that.
It is.
If you're raising your own pig and you're growing your own food, keep it to yourself, basically.
Yeah.
Don't get government grants.
What people don't realize is that the 4-H was actually designed by the government to make changes within the home. Anytime that there was something new, some new kind of way to do agriculture, or say canning. Canning is a primary example. When people, when they started making and finding new ways to do canning so it was safer for people, so they weren't dying from botulism, they actually taught the children. They involved them in this program, taught the children how to do canning, and sent them home. And when they go home, what do? They educate their parents about these new processes. Now, we can see that some of those things are probably beneficial, but there's also something that says that, this can change in a whole new direction should anybody decide that they want to take it a whole new direction. And they are, and that's not something to be laughing about, So I generally try to stay as far away from 4-H business as possible. My children have begged me and begged me and begged me, and I have said no. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Melanie. I wanted to make sure that you added that, and then I wanted to make sure that Susanne had a little more time to offer some, because we're already up to 5 minutes from the end. So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, thank you, and have a great time.
No, it's okay. Thank you, and thanks so much for all of your calls. They're important to us. So please call again, and you are a wealth of information for us as well. Thank you, Melanie.
Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.
So Susanne, any last thoughts here in our last few minutes before we go? We're definitely going to have you back because there's a lot more to talk about.
Thank you. Look into the Council for National Policy. Again, their website is cfnp.org, Charlie Francis Nancy Paul.org. Put in somebody's name in the search engine and find out if they belong to them. Read their mission statement. They are also connected to the family breakfast, the national prayer breakfast that happens. Okay? A lot of their members. Yeah. This is not an infiltration. This is a creation. What their goal is to create a civilian army with the militias to combat the liberalism of the CFR, which is the blue team, which has all the police state stuff.
Right.
And if we buy into this, we will end up fighting their war. And after we're done, we're going to get all the things that all the other countries get after they fight their wars with the fake revolutions. We cannot... I know that we're frustrated. I know that we want to lash out. I know that we're angry and we want to make it stop, and we think that by violent interaction that we're going to get somewhere. We're not. Buy into this. Please look into what people are who show up in alternative media, find their connections, and stop listening to them. I think it's funny that Orly Tates and Jerome Corsi, who are integral in the birther movement, are CNP members. How much of the birther movement is the truth? I don't know. I'm not saying this so that we all get deflated and say, well, you know, everything's a lie, so what can I do? Throw my hands up in the air and stick my head in the ground. No. There is truth out there. You have to find it. You really have to do your own research. We're not just saying this because it's a catchphrase. It's time for us to participate in our constitutional republic and not let the celebrities that we look up to dictate what actions we take, and stop reacting to the information, because when you react, you make poor decisions. And if you don't believe me, just look back on your life. Every time you emotionally reacted, you made a bad decision. You probably had to clean up a mess. Well, the mess that we're talking about is the destruction of our country in totality, and we can't clean up that mess. It's not like we get a broom and a Swiffer out and we're done. Once it's gone, it's over.
Thank you so much, Susanne.
Thank you.
Excellent show. We will have you back soon, okay?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Who we got next week?
Next week we have Thomas Sheridan back. Woohoo! So this
the lovely
and
talented fuzzy Irishman, Thomas Sheridan. We'll see you next week, brothers and sisters, here on The Bridge.